Hey, 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 what's going on, people? Welcome to today's show. We're here, startups, here in Silicon Valley, here in San Francisco, here in Sunnyvale, here in Cupertino, here in the city, here in Oakland. Basically, I'm here to to help you figure out when should you incorporate a Delaware C Corp, when to incorporate a S Corp, when to incorporate as a LLC, when to open a business banking account. I'm here to help you through that journey, through that incorporation stage of your journey through a startup, or a small business. A lot of companies get it confused from a startup from a regular company. Sometimes you don't need the startup realm. You don't need equity to give out equity in that whole getting fundraising and stuff like that. Nowadays, if you know how to um, do SaaS marketing, and that's basically a subscription as a service, and getting a funnel of people to subscribe and pay for your subscription to your service. Let's say you get your first customer, your 10th customer, your 50th customer, your 100th customer. Boom, and then they're paying you $9.99 a month or $99 a month. If you get 100 people paying you $99 a month, oh boy, you don't need startup funding. Startup funding is a myth. It's actually ruins businesses, ruins your relationship, ruins your product, ruins a lot of things if you don't know what you're doing. And I've been in the startup realm for many years now here in Silicon Valley. Basically, since probably around 2011, 2012. So I could tell you a lot of stuff that happened to me that I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self. It's like, hey, don't do it this way. Do it this way. But yeah, and basically I'm here to help you. And if you need help, chat it in the comments. Put it in the comments like, hey, I have this question, blah blah blah, and will DM you and do it offline. Basically with that question. But there's a lot of things in Silicon Valley I wish I knew earlier that I would have told my younger self like, hey, you don't need a C corp in the beginning. You don't need equity in the beginning to issue out shares and stuff. And then as a person to receive shares, don't go into don't when a founder says, hey, I give you shares in equivalent, or in and basically I give you shares for work, basically, or give you equity for work. So basically what that means, he'll give you shares of the company or equity of the company, and you do the work for him, and basically you're early founder. So that's a red flag number one right there. And sometimes founders want free work, and that's okay if the product is good, if it's moving along fast. And what I would say to that founder is like, well, how long are we going to get VC investment then? Because that's probably just a verbal agreement. You probably get a verbal agreement. Yeah, I'll get shares. Like, I'll give you shares. Like, I give you 1% or a 0.5%, something like that. Or I give you, he'll do some frivolous paperwork and stuff like that. I've been through that. I've been through that and got nothing in return. Basically, usually the founder goes haywire, and I mean haywire as the startup gets the startup doesn't really blossom out. There's always something that happens when you work for equity or work for shares in conjunction for a salary or money. And if you do work for equity or work for shares, I would say, well, what about my rent? What about my car payment? What about my credit card payment? Can you give me that in return, like every other month? You have to ask for something, and so a lot of founders do that. A lot of founders want you to work for free, and they'll give you that promise of equity or promise of shares of whatever, stock of the company, and then it never pans out, and then you're SOL, like you're sleeping in your car, or are you behind on your mortgage payments or behind on your rent, and boom, you're SOL because the startup went belly up. So I would say, hey, I can maybe work part time with my other job and help you out for equity or stock, or I would say work fractional, work up a fractional agreement, and I would go on Upwork and count my hours and stuff, or and then bill him, bill him a later bill. It's like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I still want to be paid, basically. Here are the hours I did, and always, record what you did and how you did it and stuff like that, because there is a lot of greed in starting a company. They have this big idea, they have this trajectory that they're gonna make all this money, and it really doesn't ever happen. 99% of the time, it really doesn't happen. Because and there's a lot of factors of that too. It might be a great product, but bottom line, it's not. It doesn't have a great marketing aspect of it. Usually, startups in the beginning is engineering focus, and engineering focus is not marketing focus. The engineering focus is maybe focus always on the engineering mindset. Like EM's, EMC squared, something like that. It's all what do we call that? Theory. It's all theory. It's nothing practice. So, and then they nickel and dime the marketing. So, and once you nickel and dime the marketing people, the people who are making money in marketing, don't need to work for free. They're like making money. So, unless they have a really good product and a really good SaaS funnel that's connected to a good marketing in the beginning, no one, and good traction, traction like a real, like you keep posting on TikTok every other day to see what hits. Like I seen founders, stories. Like it was a story from China Mac. He went and interviewed this sign guy in China, and the sign guy said, "Yeah, we posted on TikTok for 2 years until one day it hit, and like one after it hit, it was like everything after that was just like, butter, basically." So, things like that, like if you get lucky, but it takes work. Then that's 2 years. Like you worked for 2 years with no money, like, and money is like, if you're in a wealthy state like California, that's not gonna work out because your rent payment is the most. It's like 2 to 5 thousand if you have your own room, or if you have roommates and stuff like that. Things cost money, So, but anyhow, if you're doing a startup yourself, as you're a co-founder, I would not incorporate. I would not incorporate until you start earning. Until you have a consistent model of partnerships or subscription to consumers. And that means partnerships like as in B2B partnership. Like, one of my previous startups, we got a partnership with McDonald's. McDonald's paid us to put ads on our site, basically. And they paid us money every month, and we used that money to survive, basically. It was just a 1 or 2 man startup. You should pay, infrastructure costs of the startup, and then give each person, make sure you, one thing you should do, and this is the future video that we will have, is set aside money for taxes. And that's where my last startup failed, because people are pointing the fingers at, oh, you do all this C Corp, Delaware C Corp, you do a foreign entity here in California or whatever state, you have to pay federal, state taxes. And then at the end of the tax season, when the tax bill comes, you got the founders pointing fingers at, oh, well, who pays the taxes? Well, we didn't. We paid each other we did have that partnership going, but when it time to came pay taxes, there's a lot of finger pointing who's going to pay what founder, and that's another thing that we should go over. Should you basically, when you start your company, do you really need another co-founder, a solo co-founder is in today's 2025 is unnecessary. So in 2025, I would say no. I would say no. Don't hire or don't look for a secondary co-founder. I would just pay that person to do whatever they need to do. They need, I would pay that person to do the engineering, pay that person to do the market. I wouldn't do any equity promises, stock promises, and stuff like that. Later pay. I was like, hey, if you need money, like I would give up my car, give them a laptop, give them something, as in conjunction with, I wouldn't give them any stock or any, I wouldn't promise anything, I wouldn't promise like a 50-50-60 split or anything like that, or 50-50 split of the company. I would just pay them. I was paying because it's a headache. People minds are like that dating book, women are from Mars, men are from Venus. That's the same with founders. If you have engineering founders are very hard to contemplate. Basically, they are finicky. They're like cats. One day they're your best friend, and the next day they're shutting you off of your own company social space. So I wouldn't. I would just do a solo founder. I wouldn't worry about getting a co-founder. If I like I said before, if I need to hire people, I would give up my laptop, give up my car, give up things that I didn't need, or buy them a PlayStation or something. I would, or just pay them or if you don't have the money, I'll tell them I pay them in a later day as soon as I get the cash. Do Uber and to pay them to write this code or something like that. I wouldn't worry about getting a co-founder. I would be a solo co-founder in my next entity. So get that. So again, going back to incorporation again, I wouldn't incorporate. I would basically do a 1099 or something like that. In the beginning, I would 1099 everything. I made a profit off this entity basically, so I would do a 1099 basically in the beginning. I wouldn't do a LLC even. I would just do a 1099. And other than that, if it push custom shove, I would do a LLC, and it just depends on factors like that. Will I do a LLC just to protect myself? And there's a lot of, and then I wouldn't even do a LLC. I would, first what I would do, I would find other founders who went through this before, and then ask them for advice. And then I would ask a CPA. I would go ask questions about CPA on Quora. I would go to find out questions about a CPA on Quora, and a legal advisement. I would get legal advisement from people on Quora. I would go and like, hey, I want to, and then I would find that person in my vertical. I would say, hey, a CPA person, who, if you're a software, is that CPA person in software, not farming or manufacturing. Basically, I would find that CPA or that accountant or that para planner or that wealth advisor in that vertical I am in. If I'm in software development, and then software development, it depends what kind of software development. I would find that CPA person, that accountant person who specializes in that lawyer who specializes in that vertical that I am. So basically, that's the best advice I would give people in the beginning of their startup. And then I would figure out who my competitors are and what they're doing, and ask them. I was thinking, hey, one day I'm going to follow your footsteps. Just message them on LinkedIn or mention them on Twitter. Say, hey, one day I want to follow in your footsteps. Well, how should I incorporate my? If you could go back to your future self in the past, how would you incorporate your startup? I would ask them the people in my space, before I would even think about hitting Gus, hitting Clerky, hitting Harvard Inc. Anyhow, hopefully this video um, was amount to something in your journey, in your startup journey. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down, or tell me in the comments. Either way. All right. Hopefully you have a great day and bon appetito.